Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. This is your coach, Mr. Magno. We're going to look at vocabulary right now. This is something that it's important to understand the lesson. So the lesson that we're looking at is lesson 7. And the lesson 7 is we're going to round. We're going to round numbers to a given decimal. Okay? And we're going to use a number line. And before we get into that, we're going to look at something called the midpoint. So what is the midpoint? Well, the midpoint is halfway between two numbers. So that's what it is. The midpoint is halfway between two numbers. So let's say you have a number. Let's say, what is the halfway point between 1 and 2? Well, the halfway point between 1 and 2 is going to be 1.5. Okay, that's one. So how about another one? Let's create another one. What is the midpoint between, how about the midpoint between this number? Let me just write it down. Between 10 and 20. Okay, so the midpoint will be 15, right? That's easy. You can see that one. Okay, and what will be the midpoint for, let's say, a number that is, for example, how about 100? Between 100 and 200. Well, you know that the midpoint will be 150. So those are easy. When we get into decimals, it's a little more challenging. Let's do one with decimals. So let me erase that. And what would be the midpoints between 1 and 2? Well, the midpoint between 1 and 2 is going to be 1.5. Okay, so what will be the midpoint between 10 and 20? All right, so what will that be? Well, that will be 15, and we already did this one over here. What will be the midpoint of 100 and 200? Well, that will be 150. What will be the midpoint between, let's use a simple number here. Let me erase this. What will be the midpoint between 0 and 1? Aha, see, that will be again 0.5. So that's what you call the midpoint. All right, so now we're going to look at another concept that you are familiar with. That is your place value chart. It is your best friend. Make sure you use it. And make sure you know that when you are when we're converting from tens to ones, so let's just give you a quick example. So let's say you're looking at you have a 10, 110. Okay, so how many ones will that be? Well, that will be 10 ones. So 10 ones will make 110. Okay, and what if you want to make 10 ones into 10 into tenths? That will be 100 tenths. What if you want to let me erase that and do it correctly. Let me just zoom in so it looks better. So what would you, let me get my markers. So you will have how many 10 ones will create 100 tenths, right? This is a 0. Okay. And how many hundreds will 100 tenths would make? Well, if you get all these and convert them into hundredths, that's going to be one more 0. Okay, that will be 1,000 hundredths. Okay, and so on. So remember, this is the vocabulary lesson for the module 1, lesson 7. Be sure to review it if you need assistance. Signing out, your coach, Mr. Magno. Make sure you review this if it's hard for you to understand it. Just repetition. Your brain remembers by listening to repetitions.